my name is Lester Robbins, and this is the ABCs of Insurance. Today my guest is Greg Pope from Greg Pope and Associates, and our topic is the importance of the correct liability coverage. Greg, how are you doing today?
Great. Happy to be here, and hope we can shed some information on the justice system for you.
That'll be good. Why don't you give us a little background information on yourself?
Sure, be happy to. I've been practicing law now 20 years, a little over 20 years, and we have offices in several of the cities in Western New York, Lockport, Williamsville, Niagara Falls, and Buffalo. And we have several attorneys that work with us in the firm, and we cover a wide variety of areas.
Okay. You want to give us a little background information on yourself?
Sure. Lockport native.
Aren't we all?
And, yeah. And went to law school. Well, I went to all schools around here in Western New York, and then went to law school at South Texas, Texas A&M. And graduated in 1979 and came back home and have been practicing law since. I founded the law firm, and that's where we're at today.
That's good.
Yes.
Good. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little review of the justice system, and first we're going to do a little overview of the Bill of Rights.
Sure.
Okay.
Good. Where do you want me to start?
Well, just explaining, just give an overview of the Bill of Rights real quick, and then we'll go like on to the Fifth Amendment.
Okay, fantastic. Well, the justice system, I think, is real important for everyone to know, given our topic today about liability insurance and having the correct liability, that what we're trying to protect against is any potential that we may have to pay someone for some redress of anything that we might have done incorrectly or against the law per se. Where does that all start, though? What's the standard? I think that's what really we need to talk about, and we don't do that lightly. We take that very seriously before we tell someone that they have to pay someone else for wrongs that were committed. It all goes back to, believe it or not, England.
Really?
Yeah, we broke off, as you know, as a country from England. And back in England, they had kings and monarchs who decided all the disputes. And if you had a dispute with the king, of course,
You always lost.
you were on the losing end of the stick. That was until about 1200 when King John did the Magna Carta, and back in our history book days, if you go back that far, that's when he granted the nobles and the barons some rights. And the law evolved after that, and there was tribunals and decisions on what was fair. And from there, of course, we broke off, and our colonies that we had originally before our country started to have their own ways of seeking redress, and they weren't happy, of course. And that led to the break-off from the British system, of course. And our own Bill of Rights were created at the same time as our Constitution. There were certain things that our founding fathers really felt that were so important that they sought incorporation of those into the Bill of Rights. And there was 10 amendments to that Constitution, and it really dealt with the government, that the government basically couldn't do certain things to its citizenship. One was basically the right to seek redress against the government if there was some wrong, and that's where our judicial system had its origins. So that was very important, along with, of course, in that First Amendment was freedom of speech and the right to assemble and freedom of religion. And then in that 10, there was the Fifth Amendment that said basically that you couldn't be deprived of your life or your property and without due process, which is basically without a court of law hearing the facts of both sides to the dispute, nor property taken without some compensation coming back to the individual. And then, of course, the most important is the Seventh Amendment, which said that you have a right to a trial by a jury, and that has been extended to mean that you can cross-examine witnesses and such, and also that the rules in the court are determined by the common law. And the common law is nothing more than what the judges have decided is fair given the set of circumstances. And so now they incorporated that Bill of Rights into the Constitution, and the states also have their own Constitution, and they have incorporated aspects of that and carried that common law precedent down to our state systems. So now all of our courts really have branched off, and they use that Bill of Rights, though, as it's really sort of its birth certificate of our judicial system. So that's how these standards are set, and because of a long-standing history.
So then that would, excuse me, that would roll into the statutes for your laws. And,
yes.
And then it would go into your wrongs.
Right. The statutes, basically, it's a fancy word, but it doesn't mean anything more than laws. The legislatures of the various entities, like the federal government and also the state governments, and of course we have our municipalities, like the cities and villages and towns, they have the right to pass laws, and by these constitutions of these various entities. And those laws also have to be withheld. It's very important that we understand that not only does the common law set the standard, but also the statutes set the standard as to how people should act in regard to their conduct before they're going to be held responsible and liable for anything.
Gotcha. Next thing would be your personal injury, your pain and suffering. This is where we start to get into the importance of why you need your higher liability coverage.
Yeah, that really does hit home. And the easiest thing to understand here is something that we almost all do, and that's drive a car. Because they are a very dangerous entity if we aren't careful. You can obviously have an accident and do some very serious property damage, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but it does. Personal injury. Now, personal injury means basically just what it sounds like. Somebody's injured. A person is injured, and could be a broken bone, could be a disfigurement. You know, there's lots of pieces in the body, of course, internal organs that you can't see that can get damaged, backs, all those types of things. So if we have a lawsuit that is created as a result of, say, an accident, a lot of times the personal injuries are the things that cause the damages to a person in their lives, and that's where potentially a person can seek redress in court for those personal injuries.
So this would come up to your lawsuit, the basic procedure.
Yeah, they would spin off of the lawsuit, that's correct. And in addition to the personal injury, of course, you have economic injury as well. You know, not only do you have the injury itself, which potentially has permanency. I mean, if you have a broken bone and it heals in, say, 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it might be, potentially that's going to create arthritis in their later years. So you talk not only about, you know, present injury and potential permanent injury and any limitation, but also economic injury. Economic injury is basically out-of-pocket costs. Like, for instance, if you can't go to work, that means you've lost wages for whatever period, or if it's permanently. So that would be an economic loss, or medical bills that you have to pay. Those are also things that you can seek redress in a court of law for if the person that injured you has been negligent, so to speak.
Okay. So this was a quick overview on basically why you need higher liability coverages. And our first thing is, why do people need insurance? And basically that's to protect their assets. And then we're going to go into the 4 components of it, and then we're going to have Greg come in and explain the need for protecting your assets and your income.
Okay, fantastic. Obviously, lots of people have the car insurance that we just talked about, and I believe that most people will tell you initially when they first got their car insurance in their younger years was that they were required to get it. They couldn't drive without it because it's a New York State law that you have it if you're going to drive on the roads. But as you go on in life, I think you realize that you've got a lot more to lose than just obeying the statutes. You need the protection of insurance, and because there is the potential for that liability as a result of driving that automobile. And that is just an example. Now, there's lots of other areas where you might need insurance for whatever you're doing. Suppose you have a home and somebody's injured on your property. Well, you want to have homeowner's insurance. Or if you're, say, renting an apartment, there is something called renter's insurance, as you know, and that helps protect the individual that is renting the apartment from someone, unfortunately, maybe, hurting themselves in that apartment as a result of some dangerous condition that could be said was created by the person that is renting the apartment. So there's those types of insurances. There's other ones as well for liability in the business realm, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later on, but this is why people need it. It's just basically to protect all of the things that you have acquired and also your income, because with regard to your assets, I'm talking now specifically about property that you may have you know, obtained as a result of your efforts in life, and you want to hopefully hold on to the fruits of your labors. If you're buying a home, that's probably your single most largest item that you might buy, and you build equity. And you want to make sure that that asset is protected from any future judgment or liability that may come your way, unfortunately. So you want to protect whatever you acquire, and it doesn't come, you know, your home is just a starting point. You could be also talking about vehicles, you could be talking about property that you own, stocks that you own, bank accounts, bonds, whatever investments you might have. Those kinds of things also you want to protect. Now, the other thing is very important is your income, because under New York state law, your income is garnishable for any types of judgments, so that if you unfortunately have a judgment happen to you, now 10% of your income is going to be taken away until that judgment is satisfied in full. So you have a lot to lose if you don't have insurance, and I think that's really why we have to balance that need for insurance and say, you know, if we're going to engage in certain activities, we should have the insurance, because everyone should have a home. I mean, we all realize that that's a good thing to have. It's good for the families, it's good for everyone to enjoy their lives. Everyone's got to go on with, you know, transportation needs with a car. You can't not drive because you're afraid of liability. Well, that's why the insurance balances that out, the risk.
Okay. Now, one thing we did talk about judgments. They are good for 10 years, and you can sign up for 10 more years. So actually, you could have judgments out against you for up to 20 years.
That's another reason why it's so important to have insurance, because these judgments, let's talk about what a judgment is first,
okay,
because we've used it kind of loosely here. Judgments are basically an end product of the trial of a matter. So if two parties go to court and one loses, and a judgment is rendered for being negligent, say in a car accident, and as a result there are these economic damages and, say, personal injuries that are, say, X amount, and the assets are X, they lose them. They take those away. So this is why basically these judgments have to be understood. It's the end product of a jury trial, or it could be a trial where a judge makes the decision in a situation, and this judgment is nothing more than a piece of paper, but it gets converted over into actions by a sheriff who can take your property if you don't willingly pay for the damages that a court has assessed against you. So the judgment is basically one of the things why we need insurance, to make sure that that judgment doesn't interfere with our lives as we earn our income, and also protect our assets for ourselves and our families.
Okay. Other thing is, most people don't realize that defense costs are built into the liability. So if you don't have the higher liability, or you have minimum liability, your defense costs are paid up to the policy limit.
Yes.
So once you hit the policy limit, the insurance